It's been a really interesting year in STEM related fields in general, and I wanted to take some time just to speak about my top five advancements that I've noticed in the past year. Some of these may be a little odd, but these are quite impactful advancements in my perception. So, first up, it's generative AI and images. So, there has been significant advancements in the past, I believe, 3 years in generative AI, which is very interesting because the build up in large language models has been going on for decades. But it's only recently now with ChatGPT where it's become prominent in the surface level and where the greater society can benefit from the uses of large language models. And in the past year, with GPT-4 coming out, it's been quite apparent in the various use cases that people have demonstrated with it and the various use cases, which I think has transformed many industries and continues to. And the most interesting thing I think about how these large language models are advancing is that it's constantly getting better as we use it, which is a very exponential growth, slanted sort of structure, which I think is very interesting and will definitely have my attention for the foreseeable future. This is including models such as DALI for image generation, which also brings up very interesting topics regarding copyright and ethical issues around whether who owns proprietary art, where the sources of the art is from. There's been some interesting court cases, and while we're actually talking about ethical issues in the AI field, most recently, what I've noticed as the most interesting ethical dilemma was a few weeks ago there was a stand-up released by George Carlin, who passed away 12 years ago. And there has been a court case by, I believe, George Carlin's estate around the actual stand-up in terms of his jokes, his persona being used like that, which is very interesting to keep an eye on because it sets precedents for cases to come. But I do think generative AI has been a major component of the past year. Two, the RISC-V Chip Design. This is an open standard for chip designs being CPU designs. Like similar to how Apple has the ARM architecture for the M series chips, and Intel and AMD have the x86 architecture for their chips as well. There is an open standard that is unproprietary because x86 and ARM are proprietary to companies and are very expensive to license. The RISC-V chip design, it's open source and it lowers the barrier to entry for new startups to get into chip design and creating their own custom CPUs for sale. This is based off of the normal architecture that CPUs are usually built on, with the normal set of instructions: read, write, add, those instructions. It's very interesting to read about. It's lowering the barrier to entry for CPU makers, and it's very interesting because you can have chips designed for specific use cases now, and it's a very rapidly advancing field. 3. Organs on demand. There has been various advances in the field of 3D technology and 3D printing, and most recently there has been advancements and research into actually creating human organs via 3D printing. There was a lady who had an ear, a surgery replacement from a 3D printed ear in Queens in New York City, and it's a very interesting case to read about. And also, most recently this year, MIT students and MIT researchers actually have had significant breakthroughs in 3D printing a human heart and actually having actuators to simulate the pumping in and out of blood for human hearts, which could have various benefits for humanity and the long list of patients who are waiting for organs once it's clinically tested and ready for implementation, which is a very interesting thing to think about and I look forward to. 4. CRISPR gene editing. So I believe many of us are familiar with CRISPR. It's basically it's gene editing by cutting out sections of the human gene and I believe replacing them and using a sequence to alter and adjust the human genome, which is very interesting as well because it can be used to eradicate diseases like HIV. There are certain cancers as well that can be eradicated by use of this, heart diseases and etc., which is very interesting. But most recently, it's been approved for clinical trials. First of all, in the UK, against sickle cell disease, and it started with the first trial, first human to ever have actual CRISPR therapy implemented on them, and most recently has been approved by the FDA in the US for human trials as well, which is interesting, and my attention will be very closely there this year. 5. Neuralink. So Neuralink is a company that was started by Elon Musk. It's about it, the core basis of it. It's a chip that is implanted in the human brain that can send and receive brain signals and I think electric sort of currents flowing into the human brain to share information and trigger certain stimuli, I believe. It's quite interesting to watch videos of how monkeys are using their brain to interact with computers. That's what the company is. It's a brain interface chip that works. It's quite interesting. And most recently, a few weeks ago, actually the first human being to have a Neuralink chip implanted in their brain. So this person's identity is confidential because again, it is initial stages, first trials, but what this signifies is the beginning of a new era of computing to my perception, because now human beings are going to be able to communicate with our machines by thought, which is quite an exciting thought. There's elements of it that's intrusive because again, it's opening your brain and implanting a chip into it, but I think to each his own, and decisions need to be made, ethical decisions as well. But the upsides are quite vast because it can solve things like blindness, Alzheimer's, and there are certain kinds of paralysis as well. But yes.